Welcome back, Together Sober listeners. I am so excited to bring you another story today. This individual is somebody that I met through a coaching program well over a year ago, and we've always, respected each other, follows each other's content. We're even still to this day members of some coaching communities, but I've never had a one-on-one conversation with her. So I am just over the moon that she was able to take time out of her day and her schedule to join us. I am talking about none other than Tori McDowell. She's a self-discovery coach. And the reason Tori's sharing her story with us today is Tori grew up in a neglectful home with an alcoholic mother and absent father. And before she knew it, she found herself in a toxic marriage, which lasted for years. And when Tori finally left the marriage, she ended in a downward spiral for another several years, not really knowing who she was until she finally hit her rock bottom and managed to climb her way back out, allowing her to now today realize that she can help others. So in Tori's words, she says, facing our traumas is fucking hard, but it is not impossible. She hopes to show those who are struggling to face the things that are surfacing that they are ridiculously strong to have made it to where you are today, and that, yes, you sure as hell can make it through this too. This passion that Tori brings is exactly what she does now every day by guiding women through the process of healing of their neglectful and abusive upbringings and or toxic relationships and empowering their authentic self within. So welcome, Tori. We're so happy to have you today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and really grateful that you invited me to share with you and be able to, share my story and hopefully inspire others to move through this, even though it's, as you said, really fucking hard.
Exactly. No, thank you so much for being here. And as you know, the mission of Together Sober is to create survival guides from our own stories, from our collective stories. So I'm so grateful to you to be creating a survival guide today to, yes, like you said, impact our listeners and anybody that can relate to your story. So let's not waste any time. I've been dying to hear this story from you. Go ahead. I'm going to hand you the mic virtually. Just feel free to take us back wherever you feel is most appropriate and just to walk us through your story, Tori.
Awesome. So as you mentioned, I grew up in a home with an alcoholic mother. It actually started with pills though. So she was initially addicted to opiates and then moved into alcoholism a little later in my teenage years. My dad while he was home, he was gone a lot for work. So we ended up with her all the time and just not being taken care of. So a lot of the time when I was really young, I was in a very kind of caretaker position and was having to take care of her when she was just passed out on opiates and things like that. And just given responsibilities that as a 5 or 6 year old, I shouldn't have been given. So my childhood was very much not a childhood. And I remember growing up, people being like, you're really mature for your age. And they think it's a compliment, but in reality, it's like, yeah, because I had to do all of these things that I shouldn't have. But in that neglect, I found that I would end up really trying to have these big achievements in my life so that I could get some form of validation and any attention from my parents, because I didn't really get that unless I was actively achieving things. And unfortunately, that turned me into a very big people pleaser and somebody with massive anxiety who just always felt like if I wasn't doing the very best I could, I wasn't good enough. And that everything is always based on the things that I can provide to somebody versus valuing myself. And part of that ended me up in that toxic marriage. I met this man when I was 16 and we got married when I was 19. By 23, though, I finally realized how mentally and emotionally abusive it was getting. And I only really saw it because my newer friend mentioned that things that were happening weren't normal. But that was my normal. So I didn't see anything wrong until it was pointed out to me. But with that, and in leaving him, I ended up just not knowing anything about myself. I didn't know what I liked to do, basically anything, because the decisions were always made by him and by my mom a lot of times growing up too. So I didn't have this ability to actually make decisions for myself anymore, because it wasn't worth the fight a lot of the times. Which is really sad when you get into your early 20s and realize how many things you've missed out on because you were too afraid to stand up for yourself. So eventually, that was in 2014. And then eventually in 2015, 2016, 2017 were very, very impactful years. Some very big things happened within my family. I don't want to go into a ton of detail with that just because it is, a little private, but that did end up traumatizing me quite a bit to a point where I just started drinking all the time. And it started really slowly. Like it started with, I'm going to go out on the weekends and come home really late because why not? You're drinking, closing down the bars, things like that, And then it started kind of making its way into my weeknights after work. I would get home and just be like, I need a drink to take the edge off. I'm so stressed and have all this panic. And I'm always worrying about work. And having that drink or two was the only thing that kind of eased things.
At this time, Tori, are you still in your marriage or had you already left your marriage?
I had already left.
You already left. Okay.
Yeah. So now I was actually in a very healthy relationship that I'm still in today. And he stuck around through the really, really bad stuff with me and was always a support system. And I'm so, so grateful to still have him in my life because he did make such a huge impact on me and was able to help me see that I'm worth more than I thought I was, because he saw all the good things and I only saw the problems, the negative traits and feeling not good enough. And he opened my eyes a bit there. But the drinking was something that we had both been drinking during the weekdays. And it was always, I don't want to drink alone, like have a drink with me, which was fine at first, until it got to the point where it's like, I'm going to have 2 drinks every night, which doesn't seem like a bad thing. But then you get to the weekend and you're like, 2 is not enough. Like I'm not feeling like I want to like go have fun right now because it's only 2 drinks. So then it's 3 and 4. And eventually I just got to the point where, and actually this was in 2021, where I realized it was too much. Because instead of a beer or a hard seltzer, it turned into cocktails every night with double shots. And in December of 2021, I knew that I was going to do dry January.
Okay.
And we had a lot of booze in the house still. And I said, well, we have to drink it all.
God forbid we throw it away, right? As God forbid.
We can't waste it.
No.
That was expensive. We cannot waste this booze. So we have to drink all of it. So I was like, I was working from home because I had started my coaching program and everything. And I was actively working on that, but we were drinking way more in December of 2021 than I think we had been throughout. Like, obviously the pandemic had a huge role in my drinking too, because like delivery, everything. And you're bored, right? You're inside all day, bored, and drinking was the solution. But so we had to drink everything. So once I got to the end of December and realizing going into January, I was not drinking at all, I kind of panicked a little bit. I don't want to say panic, but I did feel this like what if somebody offers me drinks and I have to turn it down now? Like, are they going to think I'm not any fun? Am I the buzzkill? Am I going to be the person who doesn't get invited to things because I don't drink anymore? Which was silly because it was just a month. Like I was only planning on not drinking for a month.
Yeah. And are these thoughts you put into your own mind, or are these thoughts that from socializing you had been kind of influenced by?
I would say a little bit of both, because I truthfully used to be that person that would be like, come on, have another drink. Like, why don't you want to have another one? And I would question people and be like, well, it's more fun if you have another one, kind of thing. And once I stopped drinking and got it from that side, and people were asking me, well, why aren't you drinking? I realized how bad I had been. And I felt guilty for doing that to my friends who, you know, were just wanting to like go out and have a drink or two. And then I'm over here buying another one for them.
Yep.
So recognizing that I was also part of the problem for other people was like really impactful. And what I ended up having to do was actually take like regular seltzers with me to places, because I had a hard time saying no. And it's definitely one of those things where you say no, and then somebody's like, oh, well, you're no fun. Like, you're just what, are you going to be boring now? And that kind of got to me because I was always the hype girl. I was always like, let's go, let's dance, let's drink. And so
I think it's the people pleaser too, admittedly, from a young age, that again, I don't want to kind of put words in your mouth or story, but to me, I'm thinking, gosh, there's that people pleaser coming out again. Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally. Because I didn't want to say no. Like, I felt bad if somebody's offering, I'll buy you a drink. Okay, sure. Like, why not? Right. But like, I ended up making it through all of January, even though I did go to a coaching event in the end of January, and people went out after the day's conference and were asking if I wanted a drink. And I said no to several different people. And I was like so close to saying yes. But I had to remind myself at the beginning of this month, I told myself I was going to make it through January. It's 31 days. I can make it 31 days without a drink. And I did. And I was so proud of myself for sticking to it, even when it was really hard to say no to somebody, because I honored my own promise to myself. And I don't think I have ever really done that in that type of way before. And I ended up making it another 2 weeks into February without drinking. We went to dinner and drinks with some friends. I had 2 cocktails because I was like, ooh, haven't had a drink in a while.
My turn. Yep.
Yeah, like, let's have a couple drinks. And I felt like crap for 3 days. And I didn't realize how impactful the alcohol had on my body, because I actually have 2 chronic illnesses that both are inflammatory in nature. And so the alcohol just completely inflamed everything. And so I didn't notice how bad it was until I hadn't been drinking. And then it was like, oh shit, no wonder I feel like crap all the time. So then I was like, I'm just going to not drink anymore. And this is mid-February. And then I get into, I think it was mid-April. And I went, it's finally warm enough. We're in Arizona. It's finally warm enough to go to the pool and hang out with people. And, you know, everybody's drinking beer. And against my better judgment, I had 2 beers, because people offer and offer and offer, and they're already drunk. So then you're like, okay, fine. Again, felt like crap for 2 or 3 days, just from 2 beers, which really surprised me, because I had always been called a tank.
Okay.
By
your body.
Like, yeah, my body was like, yeah, give me more. I can take it. I could drink men under the table, kind of a thing, in the past. And so having 2 beers like wreck me for 3 days was like, oh damn, like I have to figure this out. And from that point on, I stopped completely. I decided to talk to my friends and family and be like, I am not drinking. Please do not offer it to me, because I will have a hard time saying no. And I
How
still
are
got
those
those.
conversations? I know this
Oh,
is
yeah.
like such a hot button for so many people, having to communicate and how you communicate. Can you walk us through how you had some of those conversations?
Yeah. Most of it. So with my partner, he already knew that I was
Yeah.
kind of not drinking very often. And in my not drinking, he wasn't drinking as much either. Just because, again, nobody likes to drink alone. And so it was a pretty easy conversation with him to be like, I don't want anything to do with it. Like, just don't try me,
Yep.
basically. But with friends, it was a little like they were very accepting of it and very understanding, but it still sometimes felt like, oh, well, you're not having a drink. Maybe I shouldn't have a drink. And then it's kind of this like downer almost.
Mhm.
But just having the conversation of this is what I need to do for myself to be my best health and mentally wise. Um, it wasn't too hard to
Mhm.
just like lay it out. But for people who didn't know me really well and then were used to me drinking all the time and
Yeah.
then would see me and be like, oh, you're not having a drink. It was just this whole like, yeah, so I stopped drinking and like this is why. And it
Yeah.
was kind of I'm not going to say exhausting because it's not like exhausting,
A
but like,
broken record though. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I love how you framed it completely, because so many times when we're telling other people that we're not drinking or we don't drink or et cetera, if that individual potentially has challenges with their relationship to alcohol, oftentimes can take that the wrong way, can take it personally, can take it as a dig, right? But what I loved about how you framed it, and correct me because I'm not going to quote you exact, but you said, like, this is for me, my own mental health and my own physical health, and really kept it 1,000% about Tori,
Yeah.
which I think in turn helps the receiver of that message be more accepting.
Yeah. Cause I
Um,
mean, and that's exactly right. Like, I think some people, when you tell them you're not drinking anymore, they feel like you're judging them for
mhm.
continuing to drink.
Yeah.
And that was never my intention. My intention is like, this is what's best for my body and my mental health. And like, I need to do this in order to heal more. And I didn't realize how much was still left of my healing process
Yeah.
until I stopped drinking. And so for me, when I stopped in January, like I had some major downs. Like I had all of these things come up that I thought I had already dealt with. I
Yeah.
was like, I
Mhm.
dealt with this last October. I'm
Yep. I
totally
went to
good.
therapy. I'm good. Yeah.
I went to therapy. I did the work. I read the books. And then,
Yeah.
and then you stop drinking and you're like, okay,
Oh.
just kidding. Like, here's all of these things coming up that I forgot about because they
Yeah.
were just buried so deep, or that I wouldn't acknowledge because I thought it was done. And in reality, it's like, no, there were much deeper impacts from that just one situation
Yeah.
that I need to deal with. And I just didn't because I was so numb.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so true. And I'm a big kind of, I like to get on my soapbox and just make sure that people know that like sobriety isn't all sunshine and roses, and that like, quite frankly, a lot of times in the beginning, it can feel the opposite because like you said, or I call it Pandora's box. Like I got sober and man, did I open up Pandora's box. And in so many ways, it's because we've actually, and I don't know if you agree with this statement or not, and it's a strong word, but like, I'll speak for myself because I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like I neglected myself for
Yeah.
20 years, I neglected my mental health, my mental illness, bipolar, borderline, you name it. None of that stuff was addressed or dealt with.
Mhm.
And the reality is that all of that stuff is a continual process of dealing with it. There's never a go to therapy for a year and be done. Right.
Right.
And so, yeah, like by kind of the consumption, it is a form of our own neglect, which is harsh to say about ourselves. But that's how I feel. That's how I feel I treated my own mental health for 20 years.
Oh, for sure. And I ended up in like the deepest depression of my life during this whole thing. My grandma actually passed away in 2017, and that is when I like truly kind of hit the bottom
Mhm.
of I don't know how to deal with this, because she was the one person in my life that really took care of me growing up and was there. And like my mom would just drop us off at her house so that she didn't have to deal with us for the day, kind of a thing. But she always made me feel special and loved. And losing her was really hard.
Mhm.
And that just drove me into drinking even more, until, you know, until it was just so bad that I actually at one point in 2018 tried to take a break and was like,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna like have one drink when we
Mhm.
go out, like just one, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But like you can't stop at one,
Mhm.
because then you're like, oh well, this one's gone, what's the point in only having one cocktail? I'm not going to feel it.
Mhm.
um and so then I would have two, and then it's three, and it just kind of continued on until I was like, okay, I've got to figure out a way to limit this. But
Yeah.
then, I mean, that was still an ongoing process for 3 more years
Yeah.
before I finally got to here.
Mhm.
And I honestly didn't expect myself to be completely sober.
Mhm.
I never thought I was going to be the person that didn't drink at all and was like proud of how long I haven't had a drink. And um and actually for today is actually my 7-month sobriety date to the day, which is just wild.
That's
um
crazy.
but yeah, but I was so excited, and just having that like sense of pride in myself, and like knowing that I have the willpower to do something that's
Mhm.
really fucking hard
Mhm.
is it's awesome. Like it's really, it makes you feel good to know that like you have control, you have the power. And obviously addiction is not something that is just easy to come out of, and I
Sure.
100% understand that. But like a lot of people have already been through their hardest days, their
Yep.
deepest
Mhm.
addiction, their deep, like those traumas that pull you into an addiction. And it's actually been shown that 75% of women who are in recovery treatment have had childhood trauma or
Mhm.
been assaulted or things like that. And so it's like,
Yeah.
it's that coping mechanism that anybody can turn to because it's widely available.
Yep.
um, and so I honestly, I didn't think I was going to end up here in this like fully sober space
Yeah.
and have people see me in this way. Cause I was always the party girl. I was always
Yeah.
hype girl.
Yeah.
Like, you want to have a good time, bring Tori.
Yep. I think
So
this
yeah.
is amazing. I thank you. Like, I thank you for sharing all this. And I really think that it's so inspirational to hear your story, specifically because yes, maybe you had a rock bottom, but it wasn't related to your addiction, necessarily, right? There's some
Right.
correlation there. And I just love how you shared the path. And it was there, not once did you say, I'm declaring myself alcohol free, or I'm going to be sober forever, or, have a family member give you an ultimatum or anything like that, which happens a lot. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of times when individuals do kind of declare that sobriety out loud, in an early stage, quite honestly, like, and this is, people might not like what I'm going to say here, but like, you're setting yourself up for like failure in a way. Whereas the path that I hear from you sharing is sort of a true journey of self-discovery.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the key difference here. And we don't know where your journey is going to go, right? Like nobody
Right.
does. But what I hear so clearly is that like the alcohol was a byproduct of what Tori needed to work on first.
Mhm.
And by
Absolutely.
doing that, the alcohol became like, you shared that journey. Like the 3 drinks was a 3-day hangover. The 2 beers was a 3-day hangover. And like you shared that journey of it becoming less and less important to you. And it also giving you messaging along the way.
Oh,
as well.
absolutely. Yeah. And I agree with you. Like just saying in one go, like I'm quitting to everybody puts a lot of pressure on you,
Mhm.
which can then in turn become a stressor, which then
Mhm.
pushes you into being like, man, I need to take this edge off. Like, I
Yep.
want to drink. And then you're like, well, shit, I already told people I'm not drinking. So now what? And I feel like that can turn into this own spiral of, well, what do I do now? Like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? I'm not supposed to drink, but I'm feeling so stressed that my natural trigger is to have a drink.
Mhm.
And so I think in my process being a little like back and forth over the years, it it took me through this time of realizing that I didn't need it
Mhm.
and I didn't have to keep drinking just because I already was a drinker.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I feel like sometimes when you've been drinking for so long, you get into this space of like, well, why would I quit? Like, what's the big deal? But in reality, like it was really holding me back from a lot of breakthroughs. Like I had some, I felt like a train hit me a
Yeah.
few times and would be knocked down for like 2 weeks of just like dealing with these memories and these things coming up and all this stuck energy in my body that I had to get out, but that had been numbed for so
Mhm.
long that it was just like, I'm going to beat you up now. Like, I'm
Mhm.
going to come at you full
Yep.
force. And it got me several times. So yeah, it's definitely, it's not a one and done kind of thing. And I think that that's really important for people to know that just because you go back a few times doesn't mean that you're a failure. Like you can still get where you want to go
Yeah.
eventually. But just don't give up on yourself
I
and
love.
believe that you can get there. Um, and that the more you deal with those traumas and dig into who you are and who you want to be, the easier it becomes to not feel triggered to need to drink.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for me, was like, okay, I've dealt with this, I've let it go. I've dealt with this, I've let it go.
Yep.
Now I don't feel like I need something to take the edge off because it's not stuck inside of me anymore.
Right. Right.
And that was a big revelation for me. So
Wow. I love that. And I love how you took like just with the dry January piece, because a lot of times dry January or sober October, whatever it is somebody's initial mission to become sober, and they're using it as kind of a launch pad, if you will.
mhm.
And again, I see the way that, and maybe you didn't kind of realize it while you were doing it, but like in a way that was like Tori's scientific experiment, like let me use myself as a subject, which is so smart. And towards the end of it, when you were maybe in Austin, I don't know where you were in January, but
Yeah,
like,
it was awesome.
yeah, in Austin, like really the compulsion to drink was probably so high because the only work you had done was to claim 31 days off of alcohol. There was no actual real like work
Yeah.
surrounding the alcohol piece that had been done there. And that's why that compulsion was so high.
Mhm.
And I think that's so, like, the idea that you just said, like, I don't know what's going to come out of these 30 days. I know it's important to me that I'm going to do them. And then, yeah, you did drink afterwards. And so what? Like,
Yeah.
and that
Well,
taught
and it
you
was,
something else.
yeah. And it was funny too, because like February 1st hit and then my partner's like, so we're going to go have drinks.
Yep.
Like that was day one after January. And I was just like, I'll go with you, but I'm good. Like I'm okay for now.
Huh.
And so like going another 2 weeks, I was like, I think this is probably good. Like I can have those drinks now. Like
Yeah.
it's fine now. And it was fine. It was a learning opportunity though, of being like, I didn't like how I felt for days afterwards. And I would
Mhm.
rather have the energy to get up in the morning and not have a headache or not be in more pain
Mhm.
because of it. And since I stopped drinking completely, my overall chronic illness pain has gone down
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible the things that not drinking will do for your body.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. When would you say you started to really notice those physical shifts?
Um, I feel like I did notice a change just in January alone. It probably took a couple weeks before I was like, oh, I don't hurt as much. I have a
Yeah.
little more energy.
Yeah.
But I have lived with pain for so long that it was also like, oh, it's just a good week or whatever. Like, it's not that I'm not drinking. Like, I didn't fully associate the
Yeah.
two until I felt like crap after having 2 cocktails in February. And then it was like, oh, no wonder I've been in so much pain and needing Tylenol. And, of course, this is why I feel like crap. And then it was just kind of like, damn, like I could have felt so much better for the last 10 years of my life if I had just paid attention to what this was doing to my body.
Yeah. So if you take yourself back to, you mentioned some family trauma that was incredibly impactful for you, and that was kind of a turning point for your drinking. If you take yourself back to that version of Tori and you could offer her some advice, what would you say to her?
Gosh. Man, that Tori probably wouldn't have listened very well, to be honest. She was very much like, it's fine. I'm fine. I don't need help. But probably just that the drinking isn't going to fix it. It's just not. Like, you can drink your pain away, but it's going to come back tomorrow, like it's never going to be gone until you look it in the face and deal with it. And deal with the things that you knew that you missed out on growing up because of how you were raised, and realizing that I could have been in a completely different place in my life right now if I had learned sooner the way it was affecting me. So yeah, it's not going to fix everything. And that might not even be the intention. Like, I didn't intend for alcohol to fix things. That wasn't, I never thought to myself, oh, I'm going to go numb out and drink. Like, that wasn't my first thought. My thought was, I don't feel good. I feel really uncomfortable. And booze makes that less. It's less intense.
That moment. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think getting to that place in this last December of drinking so much every single day, and then being like, oh man, this isn't okay. And then everything kind of just like slamming me all at once was a very big realization that all of the things that I refused to deal with in the 5 years prior, or 7 or 8 years prior, they just were building up and like compounding. And until you really do start to peel back the layers, like it's hard to see those things for what they are. And drinking fixed that for me in the meantime, air quotes. But in the long run, it's never going to. And we have to dig deeper to figure out what's triggering us to want to drink. So once I stopped drinking officially in in April, anytime I would get this urge to have a drink, or like, we have a beer fridge. So anytime I was like, ooh, I'm going to jump to the beer fridge, or I felt the need to go there, I would like pause and ask myself, like, what am I feeling right now in my body? Where is it sitting? Am I anxious? Am I upset? Like, what is it exactly that I'm trying to numb? And I would take the time to get curious about that instead of just jumping to something to numb that feeling. And that made a massive impact. It was a big turning point of being like, oh, okay, so I'm feeling anxious because this thing didn't go right today and I don't know how to fix it yet. So just sitting in that sucks a lot. But I did it, and I built that willpower over time to be able to go back to myself and say, like, I don't need this other thing. What I need is to connect with the things that I haven't connected to yet. And that's super, super important when you're going through the healing and self-discovery journey, is like reconnecting your mind and body, because we disconnect a lot throughout like a neglectful or abusive childhood. You dissociate a lot. And I think drinking did that for me as well, on top of already being in that kind of space of dissociating when I was having a hard time then
Yeah.
drinking just kind of like, it's like cherry on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you say a lot, this connection between mind and body.
Mhm.
Can you share, and if it's in the work that you're doing with your clients with trauma, just kind of, can you share and dig a little bit deeper about that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people don't realize that in going through trauma or those toxic abusive relationships, your body and mind automatically, in order to protect yourself, will kind of disconnect. And that's so that you are not holding or thinking of the trauma in a way that is debilitating for a lot of people. Because if we're always like in that headspace of thinking about what's happening or what happened all the time, then it can be overwhelming, and our subconscious will disconnect us on purpose to really save us from that. And it's a coping mechanism that's created growing up in that kind of environment. And a lot of the women that I've worked with have been so disconnected from their body that when they feel pressure in their chest or flutters in their stomach, they don't know what to connect it to. They don't know what emotion that is. They don't know if they're anxious or upset or sad or angry. They just know that it doesn't feel good. But being able to connect a feeling and emotion to that situation when you're triggered and something happens that feels familiar. So say you have a relationship and something is said that felt really familiar from your past, your body holds all of that trauma and all of that energy within it. And your body will react before your brain can connect it. And so you end up in this like fight or flight kind of state where you're elevated. And until you can like pause and breathe and feel what's happening, it's really hard to let go of those things and to process them. And so a lot of times with people that I work with, we will work on reconnecting with the body. And that could mean things like doing yoga in the morning after meditating, or, you know, things that force you to reconnect your body or to your body so that you're feeling where you are in space. And some people have this experience of being like, I don't know how to move my arm the right way because I've been so disconnected for so long. And when you hear that, it just is, it's sad to know that things that happened in our past are impacting us so much in our current day and how we interact in the world and the reactions that we have to certain people and the ways in which we do things because of that trauma and the way that it makes our body feel. And a lot of people that I've worked with too, also, if something comes up, they feel all this pressure in like their throat and chest.
That area.
And a lot of times that is because they were never allowed to speak their truth growing up. Everything gets stuck. All this energy just gets stuck. And that can force you to shut down. I used to shut down always. That was my coping mechanism, was like cry, shut down, can't talk. Like that's it.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound strange, but I feel like a lot of people probably do it. But if I ever start feeling like that, the best thing I can recommend is going and like just screaming. And I know that sounds probably crazy to some people, but it moves all of that stagnant energy out of you and allows you to regulate your body so that you can calm down and realize whatever happened may not have been as like intense as it felt like it was. Because a lot of those triggers can be really small things. It could be something as simple as a smell or a name or a song. And that used to happen to me all the time. And I would have this crazy body reaction and not understand why. And once I was able to start like connecting those things, it got so much easier to calm myself down from that trigger and get curious about it. So the mind-body connect is really, really important when you're healing from trauma, because if you're not connecting things, you can't let go of what's being held within. And that's definitely a big part of how I work with people, because I want to make sure that they're not just holding on to that energy that is doing them such a disservice because it's affecting every part of their life.
That's amazing. I'm so happy you shared that. I know that my biggest takeaway from what you just shared is to listen to my body and what it needs, because as somebody that is still working through a lot of trauma, I know a lot of times, and as adults, right, and as mothers and as wives and whatever our roles are, we tend to stifle those needs like you described. And I can't tell you how many times I think to myself, I wish I could just scream at the top of my lungs right now, but I don't, because I'm keeping it together. I'm a mom, I'm, doing all these things. I'm living all the life things. And so just thank you for giving permission today, for people to listen to their body and what it needs. And it is absolutely no coincidence, Tori, that the journey that you've had into your sobriety is as beautiful as it is because you have been doing this work for so long, far, beyond just your sobriety date. So,
and when it comes to the screaming too, I just wanted to say, for me, I live in a house with 5 other people. And if I were to scream in my house, somebody would be like, what is going on here?
Pillows or something.
So, if you are in that kind of situation where you don't feel like you can do that in your house, grab a pillow, jump in your car, go to a parking lot, and just let it out into the pillow or however feels good for you. Because the longer you hold it in, the worse it's going to get, the more it's going to like bubble until you just kind of lose it. Like you can have that like snap reaction where everything comes crashing down because you're just like holding so much in. So screaming in a parking lot, absolutely recommend.
I love it. So one of the questions that I ask is like, if you could create a law for mental health or addiction, but I think we found our law, like just scream in a pillow.
Scream in a pillow. It helps so much. Or even like, if you have a bunch of like anxious energy, get up and like shake it out, dance, like something to move your body and get that out of your body is really impactful in ways that I don't think people even realize. So yeah, that's definitely a big one for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Tori, we're going to put everything in the show notes, but quickly here, what is the best way for people to find you, get in touch with you if they want to learn a little bit more about this mind-body connection and overcoming trauma? How can we do that?
Yeah. So I have a Instagram that is at Wondering with Tori, and that has all my content. Obviously, I do have a link tree on there as well that has a breakthrough session that you can schedule with me. It's like 15 to 30 minutes. So we can touch base, connect, and really see what you're needing. And then there's also just like a question form in there. If you just have a quick question that you're unsure on, you can also DM me. I'm happy to connect over DM. I talk with a lot of people that way. So Instagram is probably the biggest one. I also have LinkedIn, and all of these are going to be on that link tree within my Instagram too. And then you have the links that you're going to throw in the show notes too.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect. Well, we can't thank you enough I just feel like I took so many notes and I'm so excited to implement them into my life, because this conversation about trauma, mental health, addiction, like these are not 3 separate conversations.
Oh, no.
They're very clearly all, combined. And I think the more people can be doing work like the work you're doing to bring this out and to bring it together, I know people will be more successful in their healing from their trauma, managing their mental health, and finding lasting sobriety. So can't thank you enough for your wisdom today, Tori.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I mean, this has been amazing. And it's a platform that I think a lot of people are really pulling into, especially recently. So and I haven't seen a lot of podcasts like this regarding sobriety and addiction and all of those things. So I commend you for bringing that to the platform too, because it is such an important part of the healing journey and being able to really step into your own. So Thank you for having me here.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks again. And everybody, we will see you, or you'll hear us next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.